Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Welcome to the Daily Cash Flow. My name's George Robson.
Welcome to the Daily Cash Flow. My name is Peter Siegel.
Peter, I've been reading these articles about like a slew of commercial real estate loan defaults.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? What can you speak to what's going on there?
Sure. Well, the cities, the urban centers that are having the largest amount of vacancies due to COVID this year are having trouble paying their property taxes to their cities, and they're having trouble paying their mortgage debt to their lenders. And typically a property owner is going to keep maybe a year's worth of property taxes in reserves, maybe a little bit more for some debt service cushion. But the reality is that a commercial real estate building is going to rely on its rent roll of tenants to pay monthly expenses. So in COVID, when you've got an exodus out of the cities to the suburban areas and to less densely populated areas, and all these vacancies then creep up in the cities, you've got commercial buildings unable to make property tax, insurance, and mortgage payments. And so is there a slew of defaults coming? Let's look at it case by case and sector by sector. I think for the cities, they're going to have more issues than the suburban areas around the cities.
Why do you say that?
Well, because everyone left the cities to go to coastal areas, parked areas, wooded areas, mountain and resort areas. These real estate markets, as we've already talked about, have been on fire. People are leaving their small, expensive San Francisco or New York City apartment, and they're going out to the countryside where there's more outdoor space, larger living quarters. They're not going to be cramped in. Kids are going to school online. I mean, there's no way families can do that in a 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. It's impossible. So they've all left and they've gone to these other places. So the cities have these vacancies. It's an issue for these landlords. Now, some of these landlords are legacy generational owners of their buildings. They likely have less debt than a newer person on the block, maybe someone like me, for example, where I rely heavily on the financing and debt markets as my part of my real estate strategy. These old generational families, they paid off their mortgages 50 years ago, 80 years ago, and they own their buildings debt-free or near debt-free. They're going to be in a different situation than someone who's got a mortgage to pay and they need that rent roll coming in to service the mortgage. But what I'm seeing is in New York City right now, there's about 70,000 vacant apartments. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, so watch that number because I think it's going to go up. There's no absorption right now of apartments in New York City. Residential landlords in New York City are burning through their reserves. That 1 year of taxes, that 1 year of cushion on the debt service that they will typically keep in an operating account, they're burning through it right now.
Is 1 year about standard for what you would keep for that kind
I
of
think
thing?
that's a generally acceptable metric. Some people keep less, some people keep more. So let's just pretend you have a year of reserves. Let's say you're one of the people that has reserves, because if you don't have reserves, you're fucked. So let's say you have reserved. I think about a year is a safe assumption. Well, we're coming up to the 1 year mark, right? I mean, February, March, April, once we get into March, April 2021, we're at that 1 year anniversary of the height of the fear and the craziness and the unknowns that we were experiencing in 2020. And that's right around the corner. So I'm expecting a lot of commercial loan defaults in the cities, both in multifamily, definitely with office. We've talked about that, George. The office buildings, the office over retail. I mean, the retail stores are shuttered. A lot of those retail stores are just now trying to open up and get back into business, but it's impossible because there's no foot traffic. They can't pay rent, or they can't pay the same rent. And landlords and tenants now have yet another thorn in their relationship. An already stressful and strenuous relationship is now getting even more tested right now because tenants are saying, look, man, I can't, I need the foot traffic. There's none, so I can't pay my $18,000 a month in rent. And landlords have to decide, do you take the 18 and tack on the balance at the back end somewhere? Do you contractually discount the rent and just lower the rent so that when your tenant pays you 6 instead of 18, there's nothing further that's due above the 6 that he paid you? This has to get sorted out right now. And it's a classic issue because landlords never want to reduce their contract rent. And people are always asking for reductions in rent. And so what do landlords do? They say, well, we'll give you an abatement this month and you'll make it up at the end of your lease a year from now, or you'll make it up in 3 months, we'll collect the difference. And then tenants are going, well, how am I going to make up? You know, if you're giving me a $5,000 credit now, how am I going to make up $5,000 in 6 months? I mean, that money just doesn't magically appear. So that's the argument that happens when landlords and tenants try and figure this stuff out. And
you mentioned the generational kind of landlord situation in some of these urban centers. Do you think that would help or hurt that scenario where, if they don't have to pay a mortgage, you could be somewhat more accommodating?
Well, so here's the deal with that. My guess is that these generational guys don't give a shit and they're not going to reduce the rent prices. Yeah. You're going to ask, well, why wouldn't you reduce a rent price, Peter? Wouldn't it behoove the landlord to have something rather than nothing? No, and I'm going to explain why in a second. And then the non-generational owners, the more modern business entrepreneurs in real estate, maybe like myself or people in my age group or category that have been at it for a little while, but we rely heavily on the financing and debt markets as part of our business plans. I mean, we have to have reserves. So we're going to have more reserves than the generational owners. And we're going to feel different pressures than the generational owners. We might cut a different deal than that generational owner is going to cut or not cut. Here's what I think is so interesting. So the tenant will say, well, geez, wouldn't you rather have something rather than nothing? Because I'm going to shut my doors, I'm out of here. The landlord's going to say one of two things. Goodbye, see you later, shut your doors. I'm keeping your security deposit. And you're in a contract, so I'm going after you in the courts for all of the unpaid rent that you're now walking away from, right? That's what one response is potentially from a landlord. The other response is, oh, let's try and work it out. So what does work it out mean? As we said, I can either, if your rent's $10,000 a month, I can try and take $5,000 from you now and tack on the $5,000 to the future at some point, so that eventually maybe I'm made whole on the original contract rate. And tenants will say, well, I can't pay the $5,000 then, I can't pay it now. Why am I going to want to pay it then? And so therein lies a negotiation. Now, landlords will never want to reduce their contract rate. Here's why. Everything keys off the contract rent. Everything. Your debt service coverage ratio covenants, your valuations, if you ever get your building appraised for yourself or for a lender or for a buyout with partners, or if you want to put it on the market and sell it, everything keys off your rent roll. So if you reduce your rent roll, you're reducing your value and you're locking in that reduced value. Whereas if you keep your contract rates the same, and contract rates just get plugged right into your rent roll. So if you keep your contract rates and your rent roll the same, and you give away 2 or 3 months of concession of free rent, now the value of your building hasn't changed. You just need to wait for those 2 or 3 months of concessions to burn off, and then you're back on track contractually at least. And then maybe by then your tenant's paying you full vig. But often what we see is commercial landlords will, what we say is kick the can down the road a little bit, where we'll give a break to a tenant now and hope that they can make it up later, but we're not going to reduce the contract rent. So tenants, be careful what you ask for. You don't want to put your landlord in a position where you're asking for too much vis-a-vis a reduction in contract rent. I would recommend, if you're really in dire straits, you're going to have to ask for your concessions and your workouts. But your contract rent's going to have to remain the same. So maybe that comes to you in the form of free rent. Maybe it comes to you in the form of reduced CAM or utilities or tax contributions, whatever your deal is. If you have a commercial lease, if you're a residential tenant, there's just no way around it. It's really just rent. You don't have things like common area and maintenance CAM or property tax contributions that you make on a residential apartment lease where you do with a store or a storefront or perhaps an office building. So it's a tough thing. The second a commercial landlord signs a written agreement reducing the monthly rent obligation below what the previous contract rate was. The second that happens, he's reduced the value of the building, and you can't reduce the value of the building. You've got loan agreements that prevent you from reducing the value of your building. You have to maintain loan-to-value ratios. The lender, the bank who gives me the money, has a contract with me, and I've agreed to it, and it says that I can't take any action which is going to reduce the value of their collateral. So that's why you don't see commercial real estate landlords and owners rushing to the table to say, gosh, we'd rather have something than nothing, let's reduce everybody's rent. They're not going to reduce anybody's rent in the rent contract, the lease. They're not going to do that. They're just going to give you some free rent. They're going to make a payment plan with you. They're going to try all sorts of creative ways to skin the cat so that you can survive through this fucked up time and they can get paid what you've contractually obligated yourself to pay them at some point.
Right, and we're talking about, there's a bit of a myth surrounding landlords being in total control of these scenarios where a lot of times they have
they're in control, but landlords need relief too. They have to answer to people too. Landlords have to pay their property taxes where the building gets liened and the cities come in and take possession. Landlords have to pay their mortgages or the building gets liened in foreclosure and banks come in and take possession of the property. So all of these things are real, and landlords have bills to pay, and landlords have to answer to people. And there's this weird thing where, it's almost like, the landlord is iconically the person with money, and the tenant is iconically the person who pays the landlord money. And, the consequence of not paying is that the person with money evicts the person that doesn't have money, and, there's the historical strenuous landlord-tenant relationship summed up right there. But landlords have, it's not like they're sitting behind a curtain in a big golden chair just with piles of gold around them. I wish that were the case. But no, really, it's a business. And every building that you drive by and see, every building that you can look at, every store that you can see, every restaurant, every bank building, every shopping mall, look at them like businesses, because that's what they are. Either they're successful businesses or they're not successful businesses. And businesses, let's all appreciate, have income and expenses. The expenses have to be paid. So a landlord has to pay their expenses just like you and I and everybody else does. Tenants, employees, corporate leaders, families. Everyone's got to pay their bills. The landlord's bills are property taxes, insurance, maintenance, payroll to maintain the building, utilities. So all that stuff has to happen, and when it doesn't, services get decreased at the building level, so the tenant's experience is poor. And the landlord could lose his business, could lose his building, and it's a problem. So, landlords need relief too, not in the same ways that struggling families might need relief, who are lower income earners, not in the same ways that people affected by something horrible like the COVID pandemic who have gotten physically ill. Everyone's got their own needs that have to be met and obligations that have to be fulfilled. But on the landlord side, the commercial property owner has to pay these bills, and that's why they're not rushing to just sign a lease for whatever amount, because the second they do that, the value of their building goes down, and now they're toast. So they'd rather keep a space vacant and say, oh, it's on the market for $10,000 a month, than sign an offer from someone at $5,000 a month. Because as soon as he signs the $5,000 a month offer, the value of that commercial space has just gone down by 50%. Whereas if he keeps it vacant, it's vacant and it costs him a little bit of carrying cost, but it's vacant and the potential, the hope, the prayer is still there that he can get someone in at a high contract rate, which is in conformity with his loan documents and with his asset values.
And this goes back to something, we've talked about this a bunch of times, of just how we're all connected. And
we are all connected, George.
And it all works that way.
This is exactly that.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about pricing.
Pricing of what?
Specifically, how do you focus on mid-priced product as opposed to, you could have gone into luxury apartment buildings, you could have gone into, quote unquote affordable, whatever that might mean.
Yeah.
But you said before about how mid-priced product was something that you focused on. Why is that?
Fair enough. So, and good question. In the markets that I operate in, the bulk of the market makes between $45,000 and $150,000 a year. Now, you could say that about a lot of different markets. in densely populated areas around our country. That's a pretty standard range of incomes. In the cities, you've got rents that are much higher than that. And as you point out, the luxury markets are luxury. They can be $10, $15, $20, $30,000 a month for a condo, an apartment, a house, right? Something like that. It's not cheap in these expensive markets. So why am I invested in mid-price products? So I want to cast the widest net possible to the largest audience possible. And that's the $45,000 to $150,000 income earners. There's more of those than anything. If I provide a great product at that mid-price point, I feel that there's a better chance of me being full and having full buildings and signing leases to new tenants and having a business. If I put out a product that's $20,000 or $25,000 a month, like you'll see in any of these cities, there's these beautiful apartments or condos or whatever that you can rent, and they're that much money. If I put something like that out, I mean, it may rent, it may not, it may sit for a few months. Now we're carrying a vacant space where maybe we have that conversation with someone who wants to give me a lowball offer, and I'm not going to take it, but I'll give them free rent. And I don't know what's going to happen. It's luxury product. And also with luxury product, the biggest thing I find with luxury product is that people are usually stretching a little too far to get into something that's a little too much house for them. Right. It's a little too much. And when the shit hits the fan, and at the end of the day, people can retract back to less expensive housing. That's still good housing. It's safe, it's clean, it's well located. It's got some amenities that are appropriate for them. And it doesn't have to be $10,000 or $20,000 a month. It could be $2,000 a month, or $3,000 or $1,500. Our price points, George, are about $1,400 to $2,000 a month, which is affordable, and I'm air quoting around the word affordable because affordable in our business means no more than 35% income to rent ratio for the people that move into our apartments. So I use the word affordable if you're at 35% or less, no more than 35%. You can afford $1,400 to $2,000 a month. If you are at an income to rent ratio that's higher than 35%, you're no longer in the realm of what I will call affordability. You're more highly likely to default on your rent obligation if you're above a 35% income to rent ratio. It's just the biggest net I can cast.
And as you said, real estate's a numbers game, and so if you can, take more swings in that particular demographic, that's going to do well for you.
We're trying to provide the best product to the most people possible. That's the middle market for us. I want to be the category killer in the middle market. I try to be. I think that I am, but I think that middle market is going to be your solution in good times and bad. When times are good and the pastures are greener, you're going to see the people that are already in mid-price product leave mid-price product in favor of reaching farther to try and get into a higher end, perhaps luxury housing situation. Maybe times are good, they're making more money, so they're going to upgrade from their 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom apartment, or they're going to upgrade from their 2-bedroom apartment and leave that building and go buy a house perhaps. So we see a lot of outflow of our mid-price product during good times, but we also see a lot of inflow because just like mid-price can now reach for the higher end, the lower tiers can also now have easier access and closer reach to the mid-end. And the middle category will fill up much more quickly when times are good, despite there being people reaching to go spend more money on luxury. Now, when times get tougher, here we are in 2020, right? Let's talk about when times get tougher. And it's not so easy to now afford your $10,000 or $15,000 or $8,000 a month rent payment to a landlord for your house. What do? You reject that and you retreat back to the middle market. So I think the middle gets the flow of the waters in both directions regardless of what's happening in the market. Yeah. That's what I'm looking to do. I mean, I don't want to sit around twiddling my thumbs hoping an apartment will rent. When we get apartments for rent, they last for at most a week or two. And 2, off-season, in the wintertime, holidays, when people aren't really focused on moving into a new place, at Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, that time, people are usually hunkered down. Very few people will move during that 6-week period. But, other than then, a week or 2 at most. I mean, most of our apartments
that's really short. Wow.
Fly off the shelves even before the outgoing tenant vacates. We get 30 days notice when someone wants to vacate. We'll start marketing and advertising that unit. We'll get it leased before they even move out.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. And is that something that is that kind of standard policy? You've always done that and try to fill that up in that 30-day period, or is that something that you've developed over time?
Well, thank God for the 30-day period. As soon as we know that someone's intending to vacate at the end of their lease, priority one is to get that unit leased. It would be great if someone can move out September 30th, the next person moves in October 1st, right? If you can time it like that between weekends and move-in times, and maybe you have to get a CO from your local town or municipality like we do here in New Jersey. But yeah, I mean, if you can time it like that, you're keeping your building full.
Right.
So
that's
the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah.
Got it. At one point, I heard you say something to the effect of live to the eulogy you want for yourself.
Yeah, I love that.
Can you talk a little bit about that and what you mean by that? I'd like to explore that a little bit.
Well, what do you want people to say about you when you're dead? You know, do you want people to say he was a dick? He was unique. You know, they're going to sugarcoat it, right? If they don't want to say that he was a dick, they're going to say, oh, he was an interesting guy, but man, did he really care about his family?
One of a kind.
Yeah, right? They're going to say stuff like that. I mean, what do you want people to say about you when you're gone? Because however you want them to speak about you when you're gone, you have to be that way now. So if you want people to say, oh, he was great, he was a great friend, he was an amazing father, he loved his family, he loved having fun, he was great to work with, we had so many memorable moments, he taught me so much. Like if you want that, like I want those things. So if you want whatever things you want, I want those things. So I'm trying to do that, I'm trying to be that way. So that's what people say about me, because I want that for my family, I want that for my kids, I want that memory of those things to be what they think of when they think of me. I don't want to be forgotten, dispensable, disposable. I mean, who does? You know, but I certainly don't, and I want to make an impact and perhaps have a legacy that's meaningful. And it would please me to know now, while I'm here, that I'm doing those very things that will then make people say those things about me when I'm gone. So, you know, I always try to live the way that I want people to speak about me when I'm gone, because I think that's a good carrot to strive for. You know, if you want to be a better person, start being a better person. I mean, otherwise when you're gone, they're just going to be like, oh yeah, it's so horrible. They're gone and we'll miss them, and you know, everyone's going to go eat some shitty deli sandwiches and have a few beers and then get on with their lives. You're going to be quickly forgotten if you're not slaying it now. You know, you're going to be quickly forgotten. You know, make them want to talk about you, make them want to remember you, have an impact, stand out, all the stuff that we always talk about, George. But you know, I always think about something was so cool, like when Bono inducted Bruce Springsteen into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And if you've ever heard Bono do that, I mean, it's this incredible, you got to YouTube it, it's this incredible introduction that goes on forever. These huge dynamics, big words, you know, phrases met with huge cheer from the audience. It's like he's introducing God, right? Well, it's Bruce, so maybe he is in fact introducing God. But you know, I would love to have someone introduce me like Bono saying these things, right? I mean, I'm no Bruce and I'm no Bono, but like for the things that I want, like I want people to remember me like as if I were.
And I would imagine it increases the quality of your life now as well, but by doing those things that, you know, you surround yourself with that energy in the present as well.
Yeah, it's a good path to be on. I mean, for me it is. Yeah, you got to fuel how are you, what are you going to do when you wake up every day? Are you going to act like a moron? Are you going to act like a champ? Like, it's your choice. You know, I choose to try and not like act like a moron so much of the time, but
act like Bono's going to show up at your funeral.
Man, I would love for Bono to eulogize me, or Bruce, and then I think Bruce actually eulogized. Bruce actually inducted Bono into.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, I think it was like a little bit of reciprocity there. But those are great speeches. You know, I always love when these famous people or these great people or leaders or sometimes sports figures, maybe they're being introduced to accept an award, or they're being inducted right into some organization, or they're retiring. I mean, all these introduction speeches that you talk about the list of things, these qualities that the person that you're speaking about has. And it's so cool, and wouldn't you want people to feel that way about you all the time, and when you're gone and today? And I do, at least.
That's a good benchmark to go for. So I have a listener question.
From?
This one is from Twitter.
Twitter.
What are the most useful things that you learned from school?
Like what, any college or like any?
They didn't specify, but I feel like college is probably.
I mean,
a
it's
good one
not
to
really,
center
it doesn't
in on.
really matter because for me, my, and you've heard me admit this to you before, my school career wasn't really a bunch of fireworks for most of my life. Not until later. I started taking school more seriously when I was in grad school. So my high school and college years, I was way more interested in and focused on extracurriculars and social stuff than I was academic achievement.
Which, to be fair, in high school, that's kind of what it's about, you know.
I don't know. It is for a lot of people. It certainly was for me. But I know a lot of people that took high school seriously. I know a lot of people that took college seriously. I was sort of a knucklehead in college. But I got my act together after college when I went back and got my graduate degree. And have taken it seriously ever since. So the answer to your question is, so there's two things that I can remember getting out of school. One is behavioral sciences. So for me, that was such a connect. I felt like learning about people and how they behave and how the brain works and what's going to make them make a left turn or a right turn. I mean, I felt like that was important stuff to know. If I can understand how people make their decisions, if I can predict with a high degree of likelihood what decisions you're going to make, I can gear my whole thing towards that. I can sell you, I can get you to go on a date with me, I can, get you to take the bottom bunk and I'll take the top bunk, like whatever it is, right? I can figure that out if I know what makes you tick. So I always felt like behavioral sciences were important. I got a lot from that. And a lot of that stuff, though, you can't read in a book. So for me, behavioral sciences in school was really just sort of
affirming what you already knew. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, either have it or you don't. I mean, you open up a book, you can read about it, and then after you read about it, not everyone's going to go out and start, crushing the day. For me, it was helpful, it was memorable, and I think that those things are important. So I recommend for everybody out there, if you can take a class or do some sort of acting classes or some sort of drills or exercise where you can figure out the other person, your counterpart, and how they're thinking and what they're going to decide, you're going to have a lot of success in life. So behavioral sciences, number one. Number two, accounting. Man, did I hate accounting. I mean, I hated it. And fucking Sleepsville, right? I mean, for me, I had these accounting classes. If I was awake at the end of them, it was amazing. I had this teacher who I got along with despite me taking naps in her class all the time. And she agreed to help me with some tutoring. And I needed help getting through accounting. I wasn't getting it. Not that I couldn't get it, I just wasn't paying attention. I was asleep at the wheel. And she got me through it. And I was glad she did because in life and business, accounting is a key concept to get. We all have to do our taxes. At the very least, let's just have that in common. We all have to do our taxes. Now, if you own a business or run a business, you have to deal with debits and credits and income and expenses. I mean, it's stuff that you got to know. And tax strategies, getting through life with some sort of tax strategy and plan, I mean, that's going to separate you from the pack. And I highly recommend you becoming skilled at dealing with taxes. You need to know accounting. So I was glad that I got some accounting chops at school. I hate it still to this day, but I know about it. Thank God I have it. It's in my quiver. And I got it, and I can use it when I need it. And I need it all the time, but it's not sexy. It's not fun for me. I know a lot of people out there think accounting is fun, and they sign up for it willingly. God bless you. To me, I'd rather stick needles in my eyes than take another accounting class. But
that's a good tool to have.
But it was great. It was great. I got a lot from those two things.
Yeah. That's excellent. Cool. So, it's now our I think third week of Shut the Fuck Up.
Welcome to Shut the Fuck Up. There was a building in my core market about 5 years ago I wanted to buy. There was a broker that wanted to do business with me. He'd been wanting to get me as a buyer client for a while. He wanted to be able to walk into a seller's office and say, "This is Peter Siegel, he's my buyer." So he called me, said, "I have XYZ building." I said, "Oh, really? You have it? Because I've been tracking that same one for years. I know those guys." Broker says to me, no, I know. They told me you're calling them, you're in touch with them, you know them. they're giving me the listing, or they gave me the listing. Let me bring you in. I'm like, well, you know, they haven't been returning my calls recently. Are they listing it with you? Yeah, they're listing it with me. Okay, so we'll use this as our springboard. We're in business together. You bring me in, here's my offer. Well, he brings my offer in. Turns out he didn't have the fucking listing, right? You've heard me say that before. They rejected my offer, not because they didn't like it, but they weren't sellers yet. So this broker's trying to drum up business. I don't blame him. He's trying to see what sticks. He's throwing a bunch of shit against the wall. He thought he'd throw an offer from Siegel in on this building. Well, they weren't ready yet. So, all right, well, you know, sir, let's all circle back when you're ready. So like a year and a half goes by, and I'm starting to understand that these guys are now sellers. They weren't a year and a half ago, they are now. I'm making offers. They say, we have an offer that we've accepted. Oh, really? From who? Remember that broker that brought you in, Peter? He wants to buy the building. He's buying the building now. Wow. Are you fucking kidding me? Look, God bless people that want to get into this business. I want people to get into the business. The more the merrier. If you're a broker trying to get in my business, be a broker with me. Let's make money together with me being your buyer. You'll get a commission. I'll buy a building. Let's do 20 of those, right? But don't tell me that you're going to represent me and then circumvent me and go buy the building that you brought me into. That makes you full of fucking shit, and I'm going to tell you, shut the fuck up. What happened is this guy locked up the building under contract. He didn't have the money. He didn't close on his contract. He was trying to raise money. He was trying to flip his contract. But everyone around sort of knew what was going on, and no one wanted to touch him. So he lost his contract. He got out of the deal. The sellers now have a free building. Who was the first person they called? Uncle Peter. Uncle Peter got in, got a contract, bought the building, closed, performed, as I always do. And this guy's dead to me. And the amount of people that are going to take his call when he calls is dropping every month, because I know everybody and I talk to everybody. And this guy's name comes up, and there are not a lot of people left who are taking this guy's call. So he's going to learn really fast the right way and the wrong way to do business. We're all here together. Let's make it work. Let's play in the sandbox nicely. Just don't fuck me, and don't fuck me in a two-faced manner.
Yeah, all about relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. At this stage in your career, how do you invest in yourself, and has that changed over time?
I mean, I'm constantly investing in myself. I have a friend who got a Harvard business degree last year at the age of 48.
Tell me about that.
I mean, it's fantastic. I love that. I want to do that. I'm going to do that in the next couple of years. They've got the CEO program where old guys like me can sign up and pay the money or whatever, and go apply and hopefully be accepted to Harvard Business School, which I would love. Yeah. I love learning. Look, George, we decided this year to start producing this content and to make this content together. That's an investment in myself. I'm learning a lot by doing it. I mean, I'm constantly trying to invest in and better myself.
Has that changed from how you used to invest in yourself, or do you feel like the methods are similar, the goals are similar?
I'll try anything.
Yeah.
I just want to get better at the stuff that I love and pursue the stuff that I love, that interests me, that's good for my family or my business, or that's going to expand a skill set that I need to do my job better. I love taking yoga classes and meditation classes. I find that to be a big investment in myself. I love listening to podcasts. I love reading. I used to read a finite amount of stuff, and it was really nonfiction and sort of academic business books. I would read a lot of those, and now I've been expanding out more recently into other stuff. I love reading. I love when I have the time to read. So my reading activity is really predicated on whatever time I have. I put a hammock up at my house recently.
It's your reading space.
Yeah, I mean, reading in that hammock on a nice summer day with a breeze, I mean, fuck, I'll stay there all day and read 4 books if I can. But I'll look to invest in myself. I've had personal trainers, I've worked out a lot, I've done different workout and exercise programs. There's so many things that I've tried and done and that I'm still even doing today. I mean, it's important to do. You need to be a well-rounded person conversationally. You need to be impactful when you're having conversations with people and when you're interacting with people. And the stuff that's going to make you well-rounded and impactful are going to be your personality traits, your skill sets, your life experiences. Are you traveling? Are you well-read? Are you empathetic? Can you look people in the eye and be interested in what they're saying? All of these things come from investing in yourself and expanding your capabilities and your mindset. And I think it's important stuff to do. I try and do it all the time.
This might sound like a weird question, but do you underwrite that kind of thing? Are you aware of like the ROI that is on the other side of those investments, all of them, or?
I am super aware of the ROI that I get from things that have no immediate return. So I will overinvest in a relationship with a practical joke. I will go way farther than anybody else would ever imagine to go on a gift or a birthday or a travel experience to create a bond, to create a memory, to fuel the friendship or the relationship. And I'm super aware that it may not come back right away. And I don't even do it to get anything back. I mean, I just do it because I think it's fun to do. You heard me talk about sending out the care packages during March and April with our investors. Every investor got a great care package. Some of them wrote me a note saying thank you. Some of them didn't. It's okay. I don't do it to get the thank yous. I just know. I know that when they got that care package, it was meaningful, it was impactful. And they'll remember it. They'll remember me, they'll remember the care package, they'll remember how they felt when they got it. And so, I mean, I'm aware of those things, and I think people need to be aware of those things. You're not going to get anything back if you don't give anything out and put anything out. So at this stage for me, I do it just because I enjoy giving and I enjoy being able to provide value for people. And I just know that the way the universe works, and when you provide value, you get value back. Yeah. Whether you intend or hope for it to happen or expect it to happen, it just happens. That's the law of our universe, and that's the way the cellular structure and makeup of our world works on a day-to-day basis.
When you mention gifts, that's actually my next question. What are the best quality, most unique, outstanding gifts that you've received from either online places or retailers? Kind of thing. Are there any
like that people got me from
either that people got you or that you've given people? That kind of, if we want to give people ideas.
I mean, a few things stick out immediately. I've gotten a bunch of things that I think were great. The first thing is when my daughter was born, a buddy of mine sent me an overnight dry ice cooler package from Russ and Daughters in New York City. It had a bunch of bagels and lox and cream cheese, and it was like overnight, so it was only one day in the dry ice box, and man, was it good. I'll never forget it. I thought it was the coolest gift. I've given that, right, I've taken that idea and I've done that a bunch of times with people.
Russ and Daughters is real inside baseball. That's a good.
Well, look it up. You can find it on Goldbelly. That's a great website if you're looking for, I mean, we're not a gift idea site. Cassidy's over there cheering, by the way. She heard me say Goldbelly. Russ and Daughters. But you can seek it out. It's cool. Spend the money. It's like $120. You get bagels and lox and cream cheese. It'd be the best $120 you ever spent. The most expensive bagels you ever ate, but they'll be great. So that was a good one. I remember one time a buddy of mine gave me a really cool book. It was a 3D photography book. So it was a bunch of 3D pictures and a really high quality print and a thick, heavy gauge paper and stock. And it was, like these super attractive models who are like naked and they're in 3D and it comes with 3D glasses. And I thought that was really fun. So you put on the glasses and you're thumbing through the book and you're seeing everything in 3D. That was fun. I got tickets to a Yankees playoff game, which was obviously great. I'm a big Yankee fan and always loved my time going to Yankee Stadium. So getting that gift was huge. And it was a Yankees Red Sox playoff game.
Oh, wow.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it. I mean, that's our World Series if you're a Yankees fan. Another one that I got was a great vintage bottle of wine from my birth year. Turns out that my birth year, 1968, is a pretty shitty vintage for wine, but I've gotten a few of those and I always really appreciated those. They weren't inexpensive bottles. They weren't particularly great to drink, but they weren't inexpensive and it was meaningful to me and it was my birth year and I've saved the bottles and that was always fun. I recommend doing that. There's a great guy in California, Vintage Wine Warehouse. Yeah, he's got an inventory of just everything going back, all the great vintages. He's got verticals, every maker, every grade, every country. So check that out. But those are some good ones. And if you're going to give a gift, think of a way to give a cool gift, and maybe it's something like those or something else. But
you can use those as inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, ready for Zest Quest, Peter?
Always, George.
Wonderful. All right, first Zest Quest. What are 1 to 3 things that fuel you? Or you can answer this one of 2 ways. It's choose your own adventure. What is your favorite type of fuel?
Fuel, like fuel in a gas tank, like food in my stomach?
Exactly. It could be food, it could be emotion, it could be experience. What kind of fuel do you like to?
A few things. So I would say working hard and getting a result, so achievement, working the duality of the work and then the result.
It creates momentum.
Yep. My family, my daughter, being around her makes me happy. It makes me want to then do things and do more things and different things. So that's definitely fuel for me. Creating, there's a big creative side to me, so I like to create. I found ways to be creative in business, but I also have other areas in my life where I'm creative. I enjoy being creative, so.
I know guitar is big in your life. You know.
I'm sorry?
I know guitar is big in your
well,
life.
Music, music is one way, and there's a few others, but just being creative. And even what we do here, George, managing buildings, creating buildings, adding value to buildings, creating murals on the exteriors, painting hallways, doing new layouts and renovations. I mean, all that stuff I find very creative. And I'm very involved with the process of creating our product type. So I meet with designers, we make design decisions, colors, materials, tile choices, flooring choices.
And the last question is actually kind of related to your live to the eulogy quote. If you only had 14 minutes to live, as soon as this podcast was over, how would you spend them? What would you do?
Run right home and be with my daughter. I'd hug her, I wouldn't let her go, and that would be it.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, Peter. Well, I hope that we live a lot longer than 14 minutes after this podcast.
I hope so too.
And thanks so much. I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Take care.